Intuition for Nurse Leaders is our episode topic. My guest is Jennifer Johnson, a registered nurse in Ontario, Canada, and author of multiple books, including Nursing Intuition, How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career. So let's get started.
Welcome to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast. BRG is a global consulting firm that helps organizations in disputes and investigations, corporate finance, and performance improvement and advisory. BRG's healthcare performance improvement practice offers multidisciplinary services to healthcare organizations. We focus on implementation with innovative, independent, and data-driven solutions. In the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, we discuss improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. For more information about BRG, please visit thinkbrg.com. Now here's your host, Nick Chmielewski.
Jen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nick, so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Can you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself? I know that you're an author and you've wrote a book, but let's hear more the nursing side of things and then maybe how you got into writing these books.
So I've been an ER nurse for over 16 years now. I've worked in hospitals where there was only one nurse for the ER, up to trauma centers, stroke centers, pediatric emergencies, all over the place. So I've got a pretty decent handle on what goes on where, what's the similarities between big and small, and then what are some of the differences. So it's been a long journey of just finding the perfect department and figuring that out. And it's been crazy ups and downs and all around for trying to figure out what makes a great department. And then when you do come up against challenges, what do you do and how do you try and fix them if you can?
Has all of your work been in Canada or have you done work in any other countries?
No, it's been strictly Canada and North and Southwest Ontario. So I'm not familiar with BC or Nova Scotia. I'm assuming, again, probably the wrong thing to do, but I'm assuming they're probably pretty similar. It's just the medicine is the same everywhere. It's just processes that are different.
And by the way, you are our first international guest. So congratulations
Yes.
on becoming our first international guest that is doing work outside of the United States and exclusively in Canada. What inspired you to start writing and how do you choose the topics that you cover in your work? Because you're a nurse. So how did we become an author?
The short road is work during a global pandemic, get burnt out so badly that you can hardly cope, let alone function. And it removes a lot of the blocks that you have in preventing a lot of things coming through. So all of a sudden everything comes up. So everything originally started, COVID had started, I was still working the ER. And in Canada, we actually had a lot of attorneys come forward to offer to do our wills for free. When everything first, I know that they meant well, but it really hammered home the idea that, okay, maybe we weren't expected to survive this. So working and having that in the back of your head, and my kids were 4 and 5 when everything first started. So I'm like, okay, how do I explain to my kids if I were to die doing this, that I chose to continue to go in. I chose to continue to work. I had an option to leave or to take time off, and I chose to continue to go in. I started writing down all my really good stories, the good saves, the advocating for the patient, catching something and having that really good catch. And with that, the tougher stories of working and watching people pass or traumas or all the things that no one person or anybody should be exposed to started coming up and started coming up fast. So working through that, sending myself back into those situations and rewriting these stories. And I'm going, okay, there's more to this than what I think is going on. And the more I dove into them, there's this thread of intuition, this trusting your gut idea that is littered through all of these stories, good, bad, otherwise. And I would love to bring these stories forward to help nurses cope and realize that there's a lot going on, but I can't do that without science, especially in the early days of COVID when misinformation and all this kind of ideas were going around. there was no way I was going to bring anything forward with a ton of science-based, peer-reviewed evidence behind me. And so did a deep dive on intuition and insight and the psychology and the neurobiology of it all. And shockingly, there's so much information, not just on intuition, but specifically intuition in nursing and how we can use it to better our patient outcomes and avoid a lot of these scenarios where it leaves us with trauma as well as the family and the patient. Putting it all together, that's what started it all. The book originally started out as just a trauma journal for my kids, and it morphed into this resiliency tool for especially new nurses coming into this and realizing that nursing is not what we're told in nursing school. We all want to believe that we're going to have great days and save everybody, but that's not the truth of it. It's a very hard job. It's exceedingly stressful on the emotional, physical, spiritual angles. And so let's try and round out our education for what we're bringing to people coming into nursing. And so that's where the book started. And then when I started talking at Brock University, which is one of our universities up here, to the first year nursing students, their main concerns were, how do I prevent burnout? How do I deal with grief? How do I
Wait, first year nursing
cope?
students are asking these questions?
First year, first month, have not touched a patient, have not gone into clinicals, are barely learning that most answers in first year nursing school are open-ended questions
Yeah.
and washing your hands. But they're coming with these questions in 2024, and I'm going, "Okay, we're missing a lot of this mark. So why don't I come up with a couple of journals to then help with explaining that it's absolutely okay to grieve over somebody that you've only known for 30 minutes because you coded them and you worked on them and you held their family when they cried over this loss. It's these other the soft skills that I like to call them that are integral to nursing that are very hard to explain and that come with time, but with all of these new grads coming in and leaving within a few years, they don't get time to cope with these bigger soft skills. So I'm hoping to bring it forward that here are some ways that we can journal and get down to very easy things to talk about if you've got the time and the wherewithal to talk about them. Journal prompts, it's not just blank pages staring at you. There's prompts specific to nursing, specific to working at the bedside, and trying to help newer nurses get exposed to what it's going to be like in reality, and then giving them some tools to help cope and build their skills, and then keep track of the little teeny tiny wins because the little wins are what actually builds a career. A lot of us are waiting for those really big saves where we can tell that story over and over again. I don't think I got my big save until 5 years in, and that was after moving to Southern Ontario. Putting in your first IV, getting knowing what a medication is without looking up what it is. Is it both for blood pressure and heart rate? Is it just for heart rate? Is it just for blood pressure? Being able to mark down the little teeny tiny wins that those of us who've been in it for over a decade, take for granted, that's what builds a career. That's what builds resilience. That's what needs to be kept taken account of because when you have that really hard day, because you're going to have those really hard days way faster than you're going to have that great day. You get knocked down and you get down on yourself and you say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't understand what's going on. I shouldn't be doing this. You can go back into your own experiences and look back and go, oh, that day I advocated for that patient. That day I anticipated orders coming through. That day I knew I was able to talk to my doctor and we worked out a plan together about patient care. There's so much satisfaction in those little things versus just waiting around to bring somebody back from the brink of death.
A lot of what I hear you talking about is self-care.
Mhm.
The words that are used in the topic of today's episode is around the concept of nursing intuition. So, when you're looking at intuition, are we specifically within the realm of self-care as a nurse, or is the term more broader that you've been exploring the concept around intuition?
I've definitely been exploring the topic specific to intuition and it self-care just worked itself in. It's one of those things where I was just going and focusing on you have that gut feeling that something's not right with a patient. The story's not too bad, the vitals are okay, but there's just something about what's going on that your gut's screaming at you that something more needs to be done. So in following that trail of thought, you then go to your doctor. If we've explored it, we're talking about it, we're making it okay to speak about with your colleagues. And so then you're bringing these ideas forward, and then the physician is coming and seeing that patient, and then we're avoiding catastrophes or we're changing the course of patient outcomes, thereby alleviating the potential trauma that could have happened should something not have happened. So if it was a double win that trusting your gut and following it and advocating then also led into avoiding situations which then create trauma, which then create burnout and all of these kind of things. And it was something that was completely unexpected on my end, but that makes complete sense. If we avoid a patient crashing that you've been with for 12 hours or 12 weeks, we avoid that situation entirely, then we don't have to worry about that trauma because it's never created in the first place.
Can you talk a little bit more about why this concept of intuition is often either overlooked or undervalued? You're like me, you're an emergency nurse. Intuition is so important when you're at triage, right? Deciding
Yes.
who's
Oh,
sick and who's not sick.
yeah.
In Canada,
Canada.
excuse me,
That's
miss,
okay.
can't even say the
If I
country's
say,
name right. In Canada, I believe you guys are using the CTAS system. I assume that's
yeah.
probably what's in your hospital. ESI is the most predominant down in the United States as a triage model. But
Mhm.
either way, the concept of knowing what's sick and what's not sick, trusting your gut, that's really intuition. But yet, to your point, it is overlooked or undervalued. Why?
Because up until this point, we couldn't prove it, right? There wasn't the science to back it up. There wasn't anybody openly saying, "Hey, I think this is a concept we need to come forward with at 3 AM. Yes, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it amongst ourselves. If you've felt out your docs and your docs are pretty easygoing and they trust you, you can go to a doc very easily and say, "Hey, I just don't know about Mrs. Smith in 6. Is there any way you could just have another look at her?" And that's acceptable now. It's taken a very long time, even in my 16 years, it's taken a very long time to be able to get to that point of being comfortable enough to openly say, "I don't know what's going on, but I think you may need to see my patient." And you learn through your experiences about you've pushed for a doc to come and see your patient, and unfortunately, either they have come to see the patient or they don't, and they may or may not decide to do anything. Science again, even if you're still learning to trust your gut and you're bringing it in, the science is saying that just having the physician come in and assess your patient again, just another touch on the patient, is still improving patient outcomes. So while you're still trying to figure out what sick, not sick, real sick looks like, and you're still trying to hone your intuition, just by getting the physician involved again, you're still improving patient outcomes. You're still having that extra time and attention spent by somebody else's eyes coming in. But it's considered, so when I started writing the book and I started talking about it a little bit more, people are like, "Oh, it's such a woo-woo topic." I'm like, "What do you mean it's a woo-woo topic?" They're like, "Oh, it seems so off the beaten path and not supported by evidence and not supported by science." And I'm saying, "Okay, I get that there can be that connotation to it, but here's the science. And how many times have you yourself trusted your gut and been right, let alone in nursing?" But just as a female, we all know that feeling of walking in and maybe meeting somebody that we're not very quickly not fond of, or you just have that radar go off going, "I don't know." But yet, maybe it's because it's predominantly female that the same idea goes into policing, where the police go, "Oh, yeah, no, I have a hunch about this one." That's accepted. But us saying, "Oh, I don't know, I just my gut's saying," for some reason, that's less accepted or it's less trusted. But I'm trying my very best to bring it forward, and if nothing else, just to open people having the conversation would be huge.
What are the impacts of ignoring intuition? Like we talked about the positive benefits, at least
Yeah.
as it relates to one, self care, and two, even potentially patient outcomes. But what about the negative if we're not paying attention to this?
Yeah, moral burnout for sure. You have the sense that maybe something's going on and you're putting it off and you're doubting yourself and you don't have the confidence maybe to bring it to other coworkers at the very minimum. And so you just brush things off. You're like, "Oh no, everything's fine." And then something catastrophic does happen. Think of the guilt that brings forward where you had this inkling about something going wrong and you thought to bring it forward, but you didn't. And then something happens. I've done it before myself where I've tried to say that something's wrong and it's just in my head where I'm being put off and I'm just going, just how do I bring it forward? Maybe it's just because I'm new. Maybe I don't understand what sick, not sick really is. And so how do I maybe I shouldn't be trusting myself. There are people and physicians here who know a lot more than I do, and nobody else seems to be concerned. So why am I so concerned?
A key initiative that's occurring in many organizations across the globe right now is this focus on promoting healthy work environments and what that means. So, as
Mhm.
we think about being a nurse leader, being a nurse executive, and looking within those tenets of establishing a healthy work environment, I think one question to think about is mitigating burnout among this as a mechanism to further explicate healthy work environments, in addition to all the other domains that exist. What are some practical exercises or habits that nurses can incorporate into their daily routines to strengthen their intuitive abilities? And how, as a nursing leader, should I support nurses on their journey to promote those abilities?
The most effective leaders that I've ever seen, I see them on the floor. That visual, that help solidifies to me as boots on the ground that my manager is here for me. My manager understands what I'm going through. Even if you don't have a history or can't potentially help on the floor, just being there physically is huge. Do I know what your face looks like after we remove masks? Are you there if I turn around suddenly? And whether or not that increases my anxiety or not doesn't matter. But I'm happy that you're physically there because you physically being there means you get to see every aspect of what I'm doing and what I'm dealing with. Is there aggression from the family that's going on that I'm not reporting because it's not to my level of, okay, I really need to do some extra paperwork and I need to put in the email and I need to make others aware of this. But there's a lot of things that aren't reaching that level of, I need to let my manager know that I'm dealing with on a daily basis because I've probably dealt with it a million times over. And it's just something that I'm not bringing to my manager's attention.
Yeah, so managers clearly need to maintain a clinical competence to some extent and be available and be responsive. Some of that's covered in AONL's core competencies around the role of the nurse manager. As we move up in the nursing leadership domain from
Mhm.
manager to director and then to chief nurse or supportive roles supporting those executive roles, clearly presence is one component. But what else, from a structure standpoint or from an encouragement standpoint, should a nurse leader be focusing on to support those frontline nurses in developing those intuitive skills?
The whole reason behind a lot of the journals was just to have another way for managers to be able to reach out to their staff and support them, and may not be like it's a very one-to-one kind of thing or it's just another email, but it's something, especially Nurses Week is huge for us in that the games around the gifts that we will get is always interesting. So it's, are you thinking about what I actually need? Are you just, it's just another checkbox? Maybe give me something that is actually going to support me learn and grow. And so why not maybe send me either a journal about grief or topics that sometimes we forget that the nurse managers and the nurse higher ups do understand we go through, but it's thrown by the wayside. So the soft skills around grief and grieving and nurse wellness could be huge. So if I were to get a journal or even just a couple of pages in a little book specifically for me about how am I coping? How am I doing? What can I do for you? Even just asking the question, I may or may not think that you really want to know the answer, but just having that question posed to me is huge. It gives me an understanding that I'm going through a lot and that you are here to support me. And just having that feeling of support does actually make a huge difference. Do I know what my chief nursing officer looks like? I do not. Do I know my director within the building? Yes, I do. She's very present. She's all around charge nurse meetings where we're going to bed meetings and figuring out things. She's very present. She is listening to all of us. Do we go off topic? Absolutely. But sometimes those off topic conversations really do lead us to not only one, just vent, but then feel I've at least said it out loud and I've brought it to the attention of many different people at many different levels. They will do with it what they will. And I'm really hoping that they take a peek into what's going on. Yeah. It's one of those things where I've never been a higher up. I have zero aspirations to be a higher up, because that takes a very special person to be into those roles. And I don't think I have those qualities. I have great qualities for an ER nurse. I have great qualities for an author, but I don't know about those things. And so sometimes I wonder if even bringing just some knowledge to frontline staff about this is what I deal with on a daily basis, not necessarily in a tit for tat kind of way, but just asking for input is huge.
What I heard you said that was very interesting to me around Nurses Week is stop with the tchotchkes, so to speak. Stop
Please.
the t-shirts, stop the pizza parties, and really invest the funds for the nurses by giving them tools to help them be successful on their own. Whether that's dealing with burnout, dealing with stress, dealing with resiliency, supporting intuition, something along those lines. Can you talk a little bit more about that of value added tools versus the non-value added gifts?
I don't know if everybody's aware of the hashtags no more pizza parties movement. Frontline staff is exceedingly upset because it seems like their answer is always a pizza party. And only day shift gets the pizza party. Night shift always gets forgotten, or they get leftovers that have been out for 12 hours. So the hashtag no more pizza parties is really about give us something that we can use, B, that does not have a company logo on it, because we're already working for the company. We understand that's where we're working and that's who we represent. But the only reason I'm going to wear a t-shirt with my company's logo on it is to do either housework or painting where the shirt gets destroyed. It's not something that I want to wear out into public. So yeah, if you can not put or hospital logos or things on what we're given for Nurses Week, that would be appreciated fully. If you're going to go the food route, maybe some other options. Yes, we all love pizza, but it's super played out. A fruit tray, or not just the leftovers from a CEO catered meeting, which also filters its way down to the ER sometimes.
If you
And then
want
we
to
get
promote a healthy work environment, it might start with healthy nutrition too.
yeah, fruit trays or veggie trays are more than appreciated, because we absolutely do not get any sort of nutrition properly at baseline. And that does go back to, do I have time enough at work to actually go for a break and eat properly? Or am I just running around like a maniac with a granola bar in my pocket and running off of coffee?
Any closing thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
If you can learn yourself to trust your gut and then bring it forward to your own practice within being a nurse leader, and then filter it down to your nurses to let them know that this is not only a practice that is present, but that you are supportive in it as well as a nurse leader. Just to know that we have you behind us and are there is fantastic. And so I challenge you to bring your work to us, because hopefully we can better understand you and maybe even better understand how to bring things forward to you as well.
Intuition as a nursing leader has been our episode topic, but really we focused more into the realms of how do we support the frontline staff in developing their own intuitive skills to reduce burnout, to attain retention, and to promote positive outcomes. Jen Johnson, author of the book Nursing Intuition: How to Trust Your Gut, Save Your Sanity, and Survive Your Career, has been my guest. Thank you so much. You can find the book on Amazon and other platforms. Appreciate your time today, Jen.
Thank you so much, Nick.
You've been listening to the BRG Nurse Executive Podcast, which focuses on improving patient care by advancing nursing leadership. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and podcast guest and do not necessarily reflect the opinions, position, or policy of the guest employer, Berkeley Research Group, or their other respective employees and affiliates.